A comedy concert at arena scale is a production in the same sense that a stadium concert is a production. A system of logistical decisions, technical requirements, scheduling constraints, and contractual obligations that organizes itself around the performer while simultaneously having claims on the performer that the performer did not have to manage when the work was done in smaller rooms. The lighting rig has to be rigged to a schedule. The camera positions have to be established before the cameras can do what they are there to do. The sound design has to be decided before the sound can produce what the room requires. All of this organization is built around the assumption that the performance will occur within the parameters the production has established, that the comedian will stand in the light at the moment the light is where the light is supposed to be, and say the things that have been agreed upon in the order that the production schedule allows for. American Hustle Live was a mid-2000s arena comedy tour of this kind, a production of significant scale featuring several major comedy names, filmed for distribution in a way that required the technical coordination that filmed performances require. The tour represented a specific moment in the commercial development of stand-up comedy as a large-scale entertainment product. The translation of what had been a circuit-developed form into the arena format that the music industry had long understood and that comedy was learning to navigate. Katt Williams was part of that production. His career, in the mid-2000s, had reached the point where the transition from club and theater to arena-scale production was possible. The specials were in wide circulation. The name was carrying the kind of recognition that arena bookings require. The trajectory was clearly upward and clearly accelerating. In the final rehearsal before the first show, he made a change to his segment that the production had not anticipated. A specific decision about the relationship between what the production had been organized around and what he understood the segment needed to be, a decision that required him, in the middle of a rehearsal that had its own schedule and its own obligations, to say clearly that something in the arrangement was going to be different from what the production had planned. The production's response to the change Katt Williams proposed was not immediate agreement. Productions of this scale are not built to accommodate changes in the final rehearsal. The entire system of technical decisions that supports the performance has been organized around the parameters that were established earlier, and a change to those parameters at rehearsal day means a corresponding change to the production infrastructure that supports them. Lighting cues have to be rewritten. Camera positions have to be adjusted. Sound cues that were timed to the original version of the segment have to be retimed to the changed version. All of this is possible. None of it is easy. And the specific quality of the conversation that happens when a performer requests a change in the final rehearsal of a large-scale production between the performer who understands what the performance needs and the production who understands what the production can accommodate is a negotiation between two legitimate forms of knowledge. What Katt Williams had on his side of that negotiation was specificity. The change he proposed was not a general preference or an abstract concern. It was a specific observation about a specific moment in the segment and a specific proposal for how to address it. The precision of the request made it possible for the production to evaluate it as a technical problem rather than an artistic abstraction, and to determine quickly whether the adjustment was achievable within the rehearsal time remaining. It was achievable. The production made the adjustment. The segment ran through in its revised form. The technical infrastructure was reconfigured around the change, and the rehearsal moved on to the next element of the production. The change took approximately 40 minutes to implement. 40 minutes that the production schedule had not budgeted for, and that the production accommodated because the case for the change had been made clearly enough that the accommodation was the right decision. Nobody who sat in the arena for the first show knew that the segment they were watching was different from the segment that had been planned. That is always how it works when a change is made for the right reasons. The change disappears into the performance that it improved. To understand what Katt Williams changed in the American Hustle live rehearsal, it helps to understand what arena-scale comedy production does to the relationship between a comedian and a room, and why that relationship becomes more complicated as the scale increases. In a club, the comedian's relationship to the room is direct. The room is small enough that the comedian can read its response in real time, can feel the energy of a section that hasn't connected and adjust toward it, can sense the specific quality of attention in a room that is fully given over and press into it. The feedback is immediate, and the adjustments are possible in real time because the scale allows for it. In an arena, the relationship changes. The room is too large for that kind of immediate reading. The lighting that makes the comedian visible to the back of the arena makes the audience invisible to the comedian. The performer is standing in the light while the audience is in the dark, and the feedback that was immediate in a club arrives as a generalized roar or a generalized quiet that is less specific than what the smaller room provided. The production accommodates this by establishing in advance the technical parameters within which the performance will occur, the lighting cues, the sound levels, the camera movements, and the comedian performs within those parameters. What Katt Williams understood in the final rehearsal, the thing he said clearly to the production, was that the parameters established for his segment were designed around a version of the segment that would work technically, but would not work in the specific sense that mattered most. The sense in which a comedian's relationship to the audience is maintained. The technical production had optimized for its own requirements and had, in doing so, optimized away something that the segment needed to keep. A specific element of the pacing, a transition in the material that the production's schedule had reorganized in a way that changed its relationship to what preceded it and what followed it. He named this clearly, not as a complaint, as a specific observation about what the segment needed versus what the production had organized it to be. And he proposed a specific change. The first show of American Hustle Live proceeded with the change in place. The audiences who filled the arenas on the tour received a version of the Katt Williams segment that was different from what would have existed without the rehearsal conversation. Different in ways that were invisible to them as differences, because the revised version was simply what the segment was. The performance they saw was the performance the segment had been when the change was made correctly and the production had accommodated it. What the change produced in the specific transition in the material that had been the subject of the rehearsal conversation was a quality of connection that the production's original version would not have produced at that scale. Not because the production's original version was wrong in a technical sense, but because the comedian, who knew the material from the inside, had identified something that the production's optimization process had inadvertently altered, and had been specific enough about it to get it changed before the first audience saw it. This is the specific value of a performer who understands what the work actually requires, who is not simply a person who performs material, but a person who understands the material well enough to know when the production of it has changed something essential, and to say so clearly enough that the change can be corrected. The production's job is to make the performance possible at scale. The performer's job is to ensure that the performance, when it occurs at scale, is still the performance. Those two jobs require each other, and when they are both done well, the audience receives the full version of both. American Hustle Live was a large production, and its public record is the record of what the audience saw. The rehearsal conversation is not part of that public record. The change that the conversation produced does not appear in any documentation of the tour. But in every arena where the segment landed the way it was meant to land, in the specific transition that the production had almost optimized away, and that Katt Williams had insisted on keeping, the rehearsal was there. The 40 minutes that nobody saw. The decision to trust the material over the production's convenience. The room that proved him right.